welcome. Hi, ma'am. Kirtana?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, kindly start from the first.
Kirtana, proceed.
Ma'am, accept Irdiarani, ma'am. She is not in the meet, so accept her, ma'am.
pray song.
Okay, ma'am. A pleasant evening to all gathered here for this international webinar. We are in this together and we will get through this together. Before we begin, dear participants, a kind information for you. Please mute your mic and turn off your video for better experience and to avoid of the organizing team, I welcome you all for this today's international webinar on impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education, jointly organized by Lakshmi College of Education, Gandhigram, and India Literacy Project, Chennai. And today, we are in the second year of our program. At this juncture, I invite Ms. K.N. Magilmalar for prayer song.
தீனிலாய மூன்றுமாய் சிறந்த காலிரண்டுமாய் நீனிலாயதொன்றுமாகி வேறு வேறு தன்மையாய் நீனிலாய வண்ணம் நின்னையார் நினைக்க வல்லரே நின்னையார் நினைக்க வல்லரே ஐந்துமாகி அல்லவற்றுளாயுமாய் ஐந்து மூன்றும் ஒன்றுமாகி நின்றாதி தேவனே ஐந்துமாகி அந்தரத்தனைந்து நின்ற ஐந்துமாய நின்னை யாவர் காண வல்லரே நின்னை யாவர் காண வல்லரே அத்தனாகி அன்னையாகி ஆளும் எம்பிரானுமாய் ஒத்தொவ்வாத பல்பிறப்புளித்து நம்மையாட்கொள்வான் அத்தனாகி அன்னையாகி ஆளும் எம்பிரானுமாய் ஒத்தொவ்வாத பல்பிறப்புளித்து நம்மையாட்கொள்வான் முத்தனார் முகுந்தனார் புகுந்து நம்முள் மேவினார் எத்தினாலிடார் கடல் கிடத்தி ஏழை நெஞ்சமே கிடத்தி ஏழை நெஞ்சமே.
Thank you, Magilmalar. Thank you.
Thank you, Magilmalar. And now, I would like to welcome Dr. F. Vincent Rajashekar, Assistant Professor, Lakshmi College of Education, to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Kirtana. Good evening, everyone. Here I am to welcome the resource persons and all the Augustus audience. It's my great pleasure to welcome, first and foremost, our Chief Patron, Sri K. Shivakumaranna, Secretary Lakshmi College of Education, Managing Trustee Gandhigram Trust, and co-founder Triveni Ma'am, USA, who is one of the Gandhian family, Gandhigram. Welcome both, ma'am. And I am delighted to welcome the resource persons for the technical sessions. First and foremost, it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Rocky Agarwal, Professor in Biochemistry, Nassau Community College, New York, USA, who has a rich experience, is going to start the first technical session. We welcome ma'am. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Saroj Kandaswamy, Applications Engineer, US Department of Energy, Brookhaven, National Laboratory, New York, USA, and we are eagerly waiting for her wonderful orations and speech. Thank you, ma'am. You are most welcome.
Thank you.
And we are so honored to welcome Dr. Jennifer Lord Consulting, co-founder, Class Action Work, USA, who is going to handle the third technical session. Warm welcome, ma'am. And it's my great pleasure to welcome our beloved Sir A.L. Rangarajan, Country Manager, India Literacy Project, Chennai Chapter, who is a good friend of Gandhigram and who used to visit often Gandhigram, supporting ILP project regarding. So great pleasure to welcome. Warm welcome, sir. And we are delighted to welcome Dr. Suresh, Head Department of English, Scott Christian College, Nagarkoil, who is going to deliver a valedictory address. We welcome you, sir. And it's my pleasure to welcome our honorable principals, organizing secretaries, joint secretaries, and all the participants from the various institutions and student teachers from various institutions across the country. I welcome on behalf of the college and organizing committee. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the earnest welcome. And now it's time to welcome our honorable guest. I would like to welcome Ms. T. Divya, student teacher, to introduce the resource person.
Thank you, Kitana. Good evening to one and all, to all the respected dignitaries, participants, and the staffs behind this webinar. It is a great honor for me to introduce and welcome the chief guest, Dr. Rocky Agarwal, to this international webinar on the impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education. Dr. Rocky Agarwal is a chemistry and biochemistry professor at the chemistry department of Nassau Community College in Long Island, New York, USA for more than 5 years. She is the course coordinator of biochemistry and general chemistry too. In addition, she also serves as a chemistry club advisor and a mentor to the students in research. Dr. Agarwal completed her PhD in biochemistry from the chemistry department of the University of Pune in India. She then joined the Brookhaven National Laboratory, USA as a scientist and worked for more than 12 years. Her research primarily focused on the structure and function of proteins, their complexes, and drug discovery. She uses X-ray crystallography and biochemical approaches to answer the fundamental biological questions. She has published more than 25 research articles and submitted more than 80 crystal structures in the Protein Data Bank. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce our resource person. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Divya. Now, I humbly invite Dr. Rocky Agarwal. Welcome you, ma'am. Now the time is yours.
Thank you. And I think there is a video that I have given for presentation.
ஸ்கிரீன்ஷாட் பண்ணிட்டுமா ஷேர் பண்ண தான் போக முடியும்.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Rocky Agarwal, and I'm a biochemistry professor at Nassau Community College, New York. I also have my colleague, Dr. Alfredo Milach here, who will be talking in this presentation as well. In this presentation, we will talk on teachers' perspective on impact of COVID-19 lockdown. So in this presentation, we have divided our presentation in two main topics. The first one is issues identified, and then suggested measures on both parts, work-related and at personal level, which is at home. So let's get started with the issues identified. I just want to talk about some issues, what we have seen in our workplace. So as a teacher or professors, and especially as a course coordinator of a course, our primary responsibilities are not only to teach courses, but also to develop curriculum for the class, like finding textbooks, pick best material, design syllabus, topics, objective goals, and actually create outcome and actually suggest problems so that the students' knowledge, enhances for that subject matter. Okay. So, and then also we do write and modify and develop some new experiments, and then those new material or any different material is coordinated with other professors. And another thing which we do also to maintain academic integrity. So in this particular presentation, actually, I interviewed my chairperson. His name is Dr. Alfredo Bilaci, and I asked him some specific questions, and he gave me some specific responses, and I'm going to play that interview here so that you can see my questions and his specific responses to those questions.
Sure. Go ahead.
Dr. Bilaci, can you please talk about what did your department do during lockdown for in-person labs, lectures, and other activities?
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Arwal, for the question. Let me begin with the other club and activities first, before addressing the other two, since they were quite simple. Because the college went on a complete remote basis, many of the activities that would normally be conducted face-to-face were canceled. Therefore, the college, and in particular our department, ceased to carry out any activities or clubs that would meet or any other kind of sports. They basically ceased at that time. Regarding the challenges that needed to continue in lectures and lab, it was a daunting task, especially for the course coordinators. In our department, the course coordinators are responsible for the overall implementation, design and structure, and course materials for the particular course that each coordinator is assigned to. Because there's a variety of courses that we provide, starting from Chemistry 107, which is a very, very basic intro course. It's like a high school level chemistry course that also introduces a little bit more, or is heavier on the math, because we know students need assistance when it comes to chemical math, all the way up to biochemistry and clinical chemistry. And clinical chemistry being a course that students get a certificate program through. The certificate program is, of course, given to the Allied Sciences Department. And upon completion of this, they are able to work in the hospitals, doing analyses, blood analysis, and all sorts of urine analysis, biological analysis. But of course, naturally, these students needed to complete that and be able to take a test at the end of the semester to get their certificate. So that posed challenges in and of itself. So therefore, we only having a very short span of 2 to 5 days, the course coordinators had to really develop as best as they can whatever they thought was best for their course, being the expert in their course. For example, when it came to the lectures, we had to determine what we were going to do about the academic integrity. And if students are participating or not, if we could have cameras on and off. At the time, the college didn't have an exact policy on whether we can enforce cameras to be on and off, and therefore faculty may have not required for cameras to be on, especially faculty who were not technologically up to date. We're not really sure how to use these features of cameras and so on and so forth in order to give exams, and therefore probably during lecture times they were able to, some faculty would just give a general lecture until such time that they were able to use a camera, and then they were able then to display the lecture on the camera using a whiteboard, maybe directly on Blackboard. Class participation, if the student's name was on the screen, we assumed that the student was there. We were not sure whether we should be able to activate a microphone and say to the student, "Are you there?" Right? And so there was uncertainty as to what would be considered acceptable behavior with the lectures. Academic integrity, we were very concerned about this. But again, being that we were thrown into the mix with only a few days to do this, We were left to our best judgment. Each faculty member was left to their best judgment based on some guidance from the course coordinators. So some faculty members just emailed the class an exam and had the students email it back after an hour. Some faculty members almost made exams like take-home exams. I'll give you a few days. Some faculty were able to generate exams through Blackboard, and they were using whatever features Blackboard could offer, like timed questions or maybe not going back to other questions. But there was a variety of different methodologies being used. And of course, naturally, students took advantage of those methodologies, especially from faculty members who were not really using the technology to participate in academic dishonesty. So that posed a lot of different kinds of issues that we needed to address. And we only had 2 to 5 days. So we were quite flexible with, and when I mean we, it's the chair and the course coordinators were quite flexible with the choices that faculty had to make, because we ourselves were thrown into the mix and had to make different choices. Regarding the laboratory resources, yes. Yes, Dr. Agarwal?
So that answers my second question, which I was asking about academic integrity.
Yes.
And then you also would like to point out on emails, which would be a challenging thing, which you see as a challenge.
Yes. Can you please go back to slide 2 1 second? I want to address the lab resources here. So when we look at the laboratory resources, this was also a challenge because different courses had different exigencies. So for example, organic chemistry, we could not find a proper simulation that was very simple to use at such short notice. However, we were able to supplement the face-to-face experiments with videos showing the actual experiments they were going to conduct and asking them questions. And some experiments for organic chemistry were conducted with Labster, which unfortunately was more of a video game than anything else. I will address.
Ma'am, voice is not audible, ma'am.
Wait.
I think Professor Lakshmi is mute.
So we were able to, in a short period of time, find either videos or open resources regarding lab platforms to be able to do the best that we can. The other issue was that in some cases, the course coordinators were developing and providing data to the other faculty members. So a course coordinator would have to create data for a lab with data points and data sets and be able to give them to the faculty members to implement in their labs until such time that the virtual platforms were available. Because remember, in the 2 to 5 days time that's described here, the virtual platforms still were not set up. In that period, we asked the college to provide us with funding to purchase those platforms. And so therefore, in the coming days after the 2 to 5 day time period, we were still not using the platform. So the course coordinators had to really generate a lot of data. And it was only afterwards that we were able to use the platforms.
Thank you.
So now to your question regarding responding to the email blast, yes, it was, because the whole system at our college had been set up very much on paper, a lot of paperwork, generating a lot of paperwork. At our college, we we tend to like very much having everything documented and filed in hard copy. And therefore, when we had to switch completely over to a totally electronic system, it became very, very difficult because we needed to be able to now take all of that hard copy paperwork, and the college had to transform them into digital forms that needed digital signatures. And so therefore, any kind of business that we were doing required that all faculty have Adobe downloaded for purposes of being able to sign all this documentation, being able to write in all of these preset boxes. A lot of times the paperwork was slowed down because the forms were not working correctly. It was a hardship on the college completely. And so therefore, faculty would get a large number of emails, not only from me as chair to address certain issues, but also many emails from students where maybe they were trying to complete an assignment, a virtual assignment on one of the platforms, and they were not able to because maybe they weren't using Google Chrome, or maybe they weren't using Firefox. And so therefore, faculty would get so many emails. How am I going to make this work? I don't know how this works. It just logged me on. I'm not able to do it again. So faculty would have to reset for certain students. And, many times faculty members would contact course coordinators. They couldn't get into the platforms that required, for example, some access code. Or maybe they themselves were not using something, a browser that would allow them to be able to get into these things. So therefore, as the chair, I decided to write an email and basically make everything linear in order to ease the burden on everyone. So what I did as chair was I sent an email to the department's faculty members, basically saying, look, if you have problems with Blackboard, please contact the support center of the college for Blackboard, not the course coordinator or the chair, because we cannot fix that. If there was an email issue, please contact IT. If there's a problem with a virtual platform, contact the representative or the help desk of the company that's providing this platform. If there is an issue with, for example, anything related to distance education, where somebody's ID was required in order to be able to get into Blackboard or assign courses to Blackboard, please contact the distance education office. Students were told that they must contact their faculty member, not the course coordinator. The students were being told by faculty to contact the course coordinator with all the problems. So therefore, faculty were told the student must deal with you and you must be able to help the student. It's only if you cannot help the student, or there's absolutely no way for you to solve the problem, will you contact the course coordinator. But before you contact the course coordinator, you must identify what the problem is and contact the other entities that would do that. Because one of the issues was how do you help students and how do we provide necessary accommodations? Well, that was one thing that the college looked for. If a student could not afford a computer or didn't have a computer home, it is my understanding that the college provided students with laptops. They also provided faculty with laptops who didn't have the equipment at home. And so therefore, that was one of the very important things that they did, and they made sure that the laptops had cameras so that the students can, zoom into the lectures. Also, if the student had needed some other kind of accommodation, extra time, for example, faculty members were told to contact directly the student for the Center for Student Services, where they would then provide further instruction on how a student can take an exam through their office. Then there was also the issue that in the chemistry department, we have a learning center. So we had to set up an area where the tutors would be available for them to answer questions to students having to do with lecture or lab material and so on. And if students had a problem, like for example, if a student said, Professor, I came down with COVID, I've been really, really sick, or somebody in my family came down with COVID, and I have not been able to use the computer in that room because that's the only computer I have in the house, and I can only do it through that room, and that room is now being occupied by somebody who is ill with COVID. It was left up to the faculty member to work within the syllabus to make sure that the student got an education while maintaining the integrity of the course. And of course, attending and conducting Zoom meetings, they just proceeded as usual, as scheduled, except that they were done online. It was a learning curve for everyone. Again, because you had to deal with switching screens, and you had to, mute people or unmute people, and there was a lot of time lost in navigating the system before you can conduct a meeting more smoothly. Again, this is, as you can see from the slides, it's really at the beginning that all of the scrambling had to be done to set up all these systems, and then of course through the spring semester there was still a large learning curve. And of course, faculty had to deal with all of these problems on top of teaching their own courses, and which was generating exams, creating exams, grading laboratory assignments the best that they could, and of course, dealing with other departmental duties that they had to continue to see to on top of their own courses.
Thank you. Let's please talk about the semesters after spring 2020.
Yes. So, being that the spring 2020 was fully remote, we had a meeting within the chemistry department towards the end of the spring, and we decided that this really couldn't continue, especially with the laboratories in the fall semester. That students were just looking at these videos, and unfortunately, a lot of times, the videos can be very, very good, but sometimes they're not very good because they're interrupted by YouTube ads and so on and so forth. So we decided that we needed to fix this problem. Now, before I go into the fall, there is the issue of summer 20. Unfortunately, during summer 20, with organic chemistry, we felt that we could not provide not only enough videos, but we could not really provide the proper experience for students. And so therefore, organic chemistry in its entirety was canceled during summer 20. The courses that could make use of virtual platforms were pretty much the lower level courses. So therefore, we were able to run those, and they filled up. We had a large number of students attending those. But when it came to the upper level courses, frankly, there was no real way of giving the students a true experience in lab, and therefore the organic chemistry was canceled. I believe, Dr. Agarwal, was biochemistry also canceled for summer 20?
Yes.
I believe it was, yes. Also, so biochemistry was also canceled at that time. As we began going into fall 20, the college allowed us to bring some of the courses back face-to-face, especially in the cases of the laboratories. For fall 20, the majority of the lectures, I think in almost every department, were fully remote. And so for fall 20, spring 21, and summer 21, all lectures remained completely remote. And it appears that it will be the same situation in our department for the fall, although other departments may bring some lectures back. But the reason that is because we have our laboratory courses that will fulfill the face-to-face requirement that the college stipulated. Therefore, the challenge was, during this summer 20, how can we create a curriculum for fall 20 regarding laboratories? We could not have the full capacity of the laboratory. So, for example, in our general chemistry laboratories, they have 24 seats. But at 24 seats, the students are basically sitting next to each other. Social distancing would be difficult. The same goes for the organic chemistry laboratories and the biochemistry laboratories. So therefore, we decided on a virtual experiment / face-to-face, which is what we call the AB model. And the way this would work is the following way. So for example, in general chemistry, students, for example, from group A would be doing a virtual experiment, while the students from group B would be doing a similar experiment or the same experiment physically in lab. Then the following week, group B would come in and do an experiment, and group A would be virtual. And then we switch on and off every week. So in a semester of 15 weeks, group A would be there half the time doing hands-on and half the time online, and vice versa for group B. But that worked out wonderful for the general chemistry because they had these virtual platforms like Macmillan and McNeil. But for organic chemistry, for example, it wasn't, we weren't that fortunate. So organic chemistry, instead of having a hands-on lab and the students that would be home virtually would be doing a virtual experiment, the students who would be home, for example, if group A is home, they would be watching videos about the experiment that they would then perform the following week. And group B would be performing the experiment in class. And then the following week, they would switch. Now, in the case of organic chemistry, when, for example, group A would be performing the experiment, for example, distillation, group B during lab time would be watching videos on distillation. Then the following week, group B would come in and do the distillation experiment in the lab, and group A would be home watching videos on the subsequent experiment they will do the following week. And so instead of doing 15 experiments, in organic chemistry, we did about 7 experiments. But what we did do was cover, in organic chemistry 1 especially, the 7 most important experiments that are technique-based experiments and application of those techniques, so that if any of those students went on to organic chemistry 2, they were able to easily perform the necessary techniques, since organic chemistry 2 is more about synthesizing and using the techniques from organic chemistry 1. One of the other courses made use of initially a virtual partner, where, for example, students would stay home and Zoom in through a phone or a tablet with their partner in lab and watch them do the experiment. However, in the course that was occurring called college chemistry, it was learned early on that there was too much interference and noise going on because of all these microphones that were open at the same time. So at that point, kits were generated and mailed to the students. And so in the case of college chemistry, half the students would do a kit experiment and the other half would be doing the experiment in lab, and it would be supervised by the instructor through the camera for the home students, and of course in lab would be the instructor physically present there.
Thank you, Dr. Milachi. That was really most important issues that were faced by the professors during lockdown. So I'm going to continue here with talking about the personal front, mental status during the lockdown. The mental status of professors, you are stressed, anxious. Sometimes you feel depressed, isolated, and also you spend too much time on computers, nearly 7 to 8 or more hours per day. Back, shoulder pain was very common. Too many emails to respond, eyes pain was another issue. And then by laptops, desktops, keep the integrity of the exams, generate questions, find new strategy of testing, deal with the posted tests and lectures which are already posted by someone on websites, so email them to remove it. And then finding a proctoring software platform to incorporate in Blackboard knowledge. And then there is some benefit to remote teaching is because you don't have to drive, there's less environmental pollution, you save money in gas, travel time, car wear and tear, you can take care of family, you can have increased productivity, you can focus on more important things, and also it minimizes risk of spread. After COVID, things not necessarily need to be the same. because some of the things can be avoided in person. For example, some of the lectures, meetings, office hours can be in online, and also the colleges are widely accepting new hybrid structures. You can have lecture online and the labs in person. Some of the suggested measures could be that keeping track of the computers and updates so that you know different teaching and communication platforms. It's important to have that, and also perform and teach applied learning, critical thinking, applied research. Also, keep adding new extra experiments in order to update with the new, the way things are evolving here in this world, and then learn to quickly adapt to the changes so that you can evolve in Excel. Always try to do your best and help them maintain feedback because it matters to everyone. And I would like to thank you all for listening, and I would say stay safe and we'll come out of this pandemic together. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to end this.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable speech.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
If you
And
have any
now-
question.
Wait, Kirtana. 1 second, wait. Vimaleta,
Yes, ma'am.
I ask question. Yeah.
Online mode of education affect the social behavior of our students. Is it true? True? What do you think about it, ma'am?
Okay, ma'am. One of our students out, ma'am. Rocky, ma'am.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Vimalida, once again, you repeat the question.
Ma'am, I shared in chat box. Yeah, Kirtana is, ma'am, question is in
Ma'am,
chat.
already chat box share பண்ணிட்டேன் ma'am.
Yes. Rocky, ma'am, questions is in chat box, ma'am.
Yes, so the question is online mode of education affect social behavior of a student. Is this true? What do you think about it? And I think that does changes some of the behavior of students in a way that they feel sometimes. I have seen both kind of reactions. Some prefer being remote, some prefer being in person, because I think some of them do learn better when you see a human to human connection, and they participate more, and they are actually feel more confident about the material versus when they are remote. Sometimes when you are remote, you are not really kind of having good emotional or the human interaction, and that actually they may not be paying attention as much as they pay when they are in person. So it just changes overall their social behavior. For the it also affects professors and students at the same level. That's what I would say in response to your question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable speech. And now it's time for. And now I call upon Ms. A. Priyadarshini, student teacher, to deliver your gratitude.
Good evening to all. It's my privilege to deliver vote of thanks. On behalf of everyone, I would like to thank Almighty God for making today's event and success. On behalf of Lakshmi College of Education and Indian Literacy Project, I give a really heartfelt vote of thanks to our today's person, Dr. Rakhi Agarwal, Professor in Biochemistry, Chemistry Department, NASA Community College, Long Island, New York, USA, who spent her busiest time on gracing this occasion. Today
Thank
we
you.
had a great Today we had a great opportunity to hear your thoughts and idea, ma'am. Your thought have enlightened our mind and gave information about the topic, teachers' perspective on impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education and their challenges and their problems. It was a great informative, ma'am. Thank you. It's my privilege to thank Lakshmi College of Education and Indian Literacy Project to organize this two-day webinar, Impact of COVID-19 Lockdown on Education. And also, I would like to thank Secretary and Joint Secretary, Principal of Lakshmi College of Education, Organizing Secretary, Associate and Assistant Professor, and all the dignitaries for helping us and giving us the wonderful opportunity to conduct this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Last but not least, I would like to thank our student teachers, professors, teachers, and all the participants have joined us in second day of the webinar in Google Meet and as well as in YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyadashini, and thank you all. Let us move on to the second section. Now I call upon Ms. P. Rajalakshmi, student teacher, to introduce the resource person.
Good evening to everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce resource person of this session. Mrs. Saroj Kandaswamy is an applications engineer at the Department of Energy, Brookhaven, National Laboratory in NY since 2001, starting her career supporting IT needs for various research programs. One of her primary area of focus was development of database system for managing quality assurance data of sensitive electronics components used in particle detectors in the APLS experiment at the Large Hadron Collider CERN Geneva. Since then, she has been actively engaged in supporting the scientific community with their needs in high performance computing clusters and high capacity beta byte storage systems. Saroj obtained her bachelor's in engineering, BE in electrical and electronics engineering from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore. Prior to immigrating to the United States, she worked in Coimbatore as an IT specialist and also volunteered in my NY Tamil Academy to teach the younger generation about their cultural roots and languages. Finally, I am so happy and very thankful for your wonderful opportunity. Once again, I heartily welcome you, ma'am.
Hello, thank you so much. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I had uploaded a video. So if you want to play that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please wait, ma'am.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you. And thanks to Dr. Triveni Rao for giving this opportunity and really appreciate her service to the education community in her hometown. And I also really appreciate all of your services to the students, especially in this pandemic times. Last 1.5 years has been a real challenge to everyone. Teachers and all the educational professionals everywhere have been working very hard to ensure that the students continue learning irrespective of the situations at hand. So regarding my family background, we have a son in middle school. And additionally, I also want to mention that my parents are from the Dindigul district and grew up in the village of Chinalpati near Gandhi Gramam. My grandparents were in the weaving work field and both my parents studied in the government school here. So I'm also somewhat aware of the educational and the school situation there and the hardship and the challenges that my parents faced. So coming to the present situation, when the pandemic started around the March time frame, both the work and the school became remote. The system is such that the school year begins in September and ends in June. I will share my presentation here. So, here the school year begins in September and it ends in June. There are 4 quarters here, whereas back in India we are all used to the quarterly, the half yearly, and the final terms. Weather-wise also, we have all the 4 seasons here. There's peak summer in the June and extreme cold weather in the January and the February time frame. Elementary school is from kindergarten till the 5th grade, and middle school is from the 6th to the 8th grade, and the high school is from the 9th to the 12th grade. So, for middle school and high school, the students have to move to a new school building in a different location. So, my son was in the 5th grade when this pandemic started, and he had 3 more months to finish school. At that time, everything was so uncertain. My son was not that worried, which is natural for his age, but he missed seeing his school friends. Whereas we as parents were more concerned regarding their education, and we were not sure how the school year would end. Also, for the middle school, my son would be going to a different location and a different school building. We were not sure how things were going to be handled. Plus, we were also adjusting to working remotely and handling all the work pressures. It was challenging on all levels. After a gap of few weeks, when the schools had closed during that time, the school administration decided to start with the online classes. They put a procedure in place and had to train the teachers with the new tools. Parents were informed and we were emailed instructions. One good thing is that the school continued to update us of all the decisions that were being taken according to the laws that were put in place in the country and the state according to the CDC guidelines. So the CDC is the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and it is the National Public Health Agency of the United States. Another advantage was also that majority of the students had access to computers and online facilities, and the school also distributed laptops configured specifically for the school work purposes. Here, the rule is that all children should have equal access to educational resources. But since this modified education system was quickly implemented, there were some disadvantages, and those 3 finishing months was only partially effective education-wise. Assignments were given, completed, and emailed to the teacher. But the students had a chance also to communicate with their teachers and with their classmates online using the Microsoft Teams software, which was used then. I checked with other friends. Parents with older children in high school mentioned that it was more harder on older children to complete assignments and finish the tests and exams, and especially for those students in high school who were preparing for college entrances. The entrance exams were cancelled and had to be postponed many times as the test centers were closed. Students could call up the teachers and message them in case of doubts and clarify them. At least for us parents, this was better than nothing, that the students were still in touch with all the subject portions that they had learned earlier in the year before the pandemic started. So once the summer started and the vacations began end of June, the cases slightly fell and the school administrators started discussions how to proceed with the next school year. Parents were sent surveys on the education preferences, whether to continue sending children to school in person, the hybrid system, or completely online classes. This could be adjusted according to each school quarter, depending on how the COVID cases increased or decreased. Each school district was given permission to make their own decisions according to the CDC guidelines. In our school district, there was an orientation visit for parents who were able to visit and inspect the classrooms where the students would be seated. The desks were spaced accordingly with the shields for individual desks, and the school laptops were also provided to all students for online use. In our school district, we had the option of either completely online or hybrid, that is, partially online and partially in person for the starting quarter term for the middle and the high school with 50% of the class strength. That is, half of the school students would be meeting the first 2 days of the week, and the second half of the students would meet the last 2 days of the week. And Wednesday was a remote learning for all the teachers and students, and that was a day when the school buildings and the classrooms were thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. Weekends also a lot of care was taken to clean the classrooms and buildings, and so also the evenings after the classes were over for the day. School buses were operating and also similar distancing rules followed. Students had to compulsorily wear face masks, carry hand sanitizers. Every day their temperatures measured in an orderly manner when entering the school premises. As far as the classrooms were concerned, with the 50% of the class strength, the desks were spaced apart, and also in the lunchroom, instead of the common table, each student had to sit and eat in individual desks spaced apart. Mask breaks were allowed, if needed, where the students could remove the masks for a few minutes according to the social distancing rules. We felt this situation was better than the online option, that the children could still interact with their teachers and other classmates, but following the rules strictly. For parents too, this was a better option with respect to their work schedules. The days that my son was learning from home, the schedules had to be adjusted, and sometimes the flexible work hours were allowed. Sometimes there were also problems with internet connections, but the technical teams at school helped to fix it. I also checked with other friends. Some schools have 50% of students come to classes on alternate days, and in some also all the 5 days of in school with in-person learning and with thorough cleaning of school buildings every day. Also, we parents initially had to get used to the teaching methods. This time, the school implemented a Google Classroom for online teaching. The teachers would have an instruction period where they would get familiar with these tools. This was all done at the end of the summer holidays, and in the following weeks, parents and students were given another orientation, instructions, and videos to get familiar with the classwork and the homework assignment and the test formats. The first 2 months, time was given to complete assignments as we were all getting adjusted to the new class methods, and the test marks were not accounted for during that time. We could only talk to the new class teacher over the phone instead of the regular parent-teacher conferences which used to be held earlier for introductions. Also, for parents with younger kids, before and after care options were provided following all the rules. This was a learning period and a lot of adjustments, but better than compared to the last 3 months when the previous school year ended. And it was also becoming a system that we could follow and adapt. So regarding the COVID checks, every week the school would send an email for the COVID-19 mandated screening form, answering few questions about the health, the temperature, any COVID symptoms, contacts with any other persons. Parents and guardians were supposed to fill it out to give permission for students in order to enter the school building. The school would also send weekly reports of the number of COVID positive cases that were reported to the school administration, and they would do the contact tracing to find all the students and the staff who were in touch with the concerned student and the teacher who had tested positive. They had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks and get a doctor's report to be COVID negative before returning back to the school building. During that quarantine period, students did remote learning, so no disruption in studies was there. It was a tedious process, but it helped school staff and the students and the parents to feel safer. Any classes that had many positive cases were quarantined, and classes would continue remotely for those 2 weeks, so there was no disruption in studies. So this was the case during the October-November month time, when the fall and the winter seasons was starting. So, and all the COVID cases started to rise again. We were concerned when the cases rose, but the schools still continued to operate following all the rules and social distancing. It started going down only in January end, and by that time the vaccinations were approved and ready, and all the school staff were eligible to get the vaccine. This provided some relief to parents and students as well. By the end of March, things were better, and the school planned to open up fully 5 days continuously with 100% of the class strength. But few parents, including myself, were hesitant, so we switched completely online for a couple of weeks. But my son said that he was the only one in class and who was doing online, and so he felt left out. So also his class teacher spoke to us regarding our decision, feeling it would be better for students attending school full time so they could be given full attention. Meanwhile, for those few weeks, my son continued the online classes, but he was missing the social interaction. And another disadvantage was also that since most of the students were in class, the teacher's full attention was naturally on the students in class rather than those who were listening remotely. Only after a couple of weeks, with the cases dropping, we felt confident in sending our son to school for the in-person learning. School was still following all the rules of wearing masks, sanitizing, and social distancing. So far, the schools followed the rules to the best of their ability. At the school, the students were given instructions and awareness of their healthy habits that they needed to continue following to minimize the COVID-19 effects. And even now, with very few cases, my son insists on wearing the mask when traveling and washing hands. So, any of the positive cases that came were mostly of any weekend get-togethers and gatherings where the rules were not followed that strictly. In such cases, the concerned student or staff had to quarantine for 2 weeks. Now that the school year ended just in June, the last whole month has been very few cases. Hopefully for the next year, things will become normal, and most students, including my son, have adjusted to the new rules, and they felt much better with the system now than how it all started last year. As parents too, it was a very big relief to have some sort of procedure to follow so that the education could continue with minimal disruptions. Overall, with small steps taken, we as parents felt a big relief that the school year went as close to normal as possible. So, regarding vaccinations, they were approved in April for children 16 years and older, and in May for children 12 years and older. The children were given the Pfizer vaccine here, and it is safe. My son had his first vaccine shot a couple of weeks back, and friends I spoke to whose children got the vaccine were also fine and very minimal side effects, but they had the benefits of getting the vaccine. So, Dr. Rao also mentioned that in our hometown area, the situation is more tough with less facilities, but hopefully, with better regulation of the systems, things can come back to normal. As I've heard these words from great ones, quoting it here, there are two types of education: education for a living and education for life. What we study in schools and colleges, striving to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, that is education for a living. But education for life requires an understanding of the essential principles of humanity and spirituality. It is about gaining a deeper understanding of the world, our minds, our emotions, and ourselves. I understand that for the time being that the regular school education is hard now, but will be possible when the situation becomes better. But meanwhile, if we can encourage and motivate our students to understand the basic and moral values in any situation, that will help them in their future as well as to make better choices for themselves, thus helping their families and eventually society too. And our future society, of course, includes our children, our grandchildren, and so on. So, all our hard work today that we do will give them a better future tomorrow. As I mentioned before, my parents grew up in the village. My father said students used to walk barefoot to school for many kilometers. He also mentioned that there were some opportunities to go to the village library and read educational books. A good solid education and moral values helped my parents to get better job opportunities in other places and make a better life for us, their family members. And now, through business and other social services, my parents are also able to give back to society. Sometimes I remind my son of those humble and tough beginnings where his grandparents came from and to be grateful for what we have. Hopefully, we can work together with one mind and many hands to overcome this and any other future obstacles. So, before ending, I just wanted to mention an inspirational and motivational message that the school administration here sent to the students graduating high school and moving to the college. To say that you survived the past 16 months would be minimizing your hard work, your stamina, your determination, and your success. To say as a class that you are amazing individuals is an understatement to your resiliency. So please do not forget the past year or state how hard it was or not worth it because it taught you so much. Patience when you thought you were confronted with challenges that were insurmountable. Willpower when you wanted to give up. Grit when you thought you couldn't take another change. Perseverance when you didn't want to care anymore. How do we know that you learned the true meaning of patience, willpower, grit, and perseverance? Because you students demonstrated that throughout this time of prolonged stress, as members of this class, you learned in classrooms that look different and you continue to be academically successful. You were given new teaching tools to be prepared if needed to learn from home. You quickly learned this new platform and adjusted as needed. As the school year progressed, you gave us multiple opportunities to celebrate your successes. So, this is a common message anywhere and anytime to anyone. And though it may take a longer time in rural areas, but it is not impossible. So let us hope and pray for this that when we put our minds together, that there is no situation that we cannot overcome. Thank you. Stay safe. Nandri.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable speech. And it's time for interaction. Participants, please share your comments and queries on the chat box.
Wait, Kitna. Wait.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to add also, my what I felt was the teachers in the school, they all said that the children were, when they practice all the rules and, they followed all the rules, they were much more safer. They, following all the rules. So rather than cases, the COVID cases only came when they were interacting outside during the weekend, get-togethers and anything. But the school, they followed all the procedures and everything and kept the students as safe as possible. So the teachers really, they play a great influence. So on following all the rules. So school is really safe if you follow all the rules properly. That's what I feel.
Question in chat box now.
In the chat box, hold on.
How can we train our parents, society to assess their kids' online class?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because, so I will tell you from my experience, like when in the beginning, when the pandemic started, so that time they started with the Microsoft tools. So they gave us some instructions. We got emails. So they sent us videos, they sent us email following the rules and how to do it. And also after the school started, the new school year started. So that time also 2 months, like, they were training us, all the teachers, like his science teacher, math, English teacher, everybody would send us videos, give us instructions and how to look at the assignments, how are the test formats and everything. And I actually had to sit with my son and go through all those things. So yeah, it was a learning experience for us also because we were not used to it. So, but by the end of, as the year progressed, we became comfortable. And the teachers also, wanted us to actively, the parents to actively participate in looking at their, like it was Google Classroom. So to check if their assignments had been submitted and all those things. So that's how it was one step at a time. And, by the end of the year, so everything was okay. So it became much more comfortable for parents also.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, and also, the other thing, I know here it's difficult for outside classrooms, but in India, that's what I think, it's possible. Even when the situation becomes better, you can have a class outside and, have it like 50% of the students, because that is what they did at the beginning. Like they had half the students come. So you had half the students and then later the week, the other half of the students. So, sitting with nature and doing that is pretty good. And I also like to emphasize, like, in India, like, some time can be also allocated for the exercises, like the yoga, breathing exercises. So, that also helps. It's not only like the vaccine. The vaccine is also very good. When it's available, just get it because I feel it's very helpful. And also at the same time, our traditional, the yoga and the food and everything. So if the teachers, sometimes the parents may not understand. So, the teachers have the information. They can spend some time with students to do all those things. So it's an overall development of both, mind and body for the students. That's what I feel. So.
Thank you, madam. Somebody from Saubhagya Illam raised the question.
Awesome.
Sir, unmuted.
Oh, another question?
No, ma'am.
Wait a moment. Any other question from Saubhagya Illam? Okay. One question from YouTube chat box.
Okay.
Small school students are not interested to learn through mobile or online classes.
Right.
So, how to stimulate the curiosity?
I know, like here we had for elementary school students, I know my son is in middle school now, but elementary school students, they did have all the students come to school. But I know if you want to do it online, you will need to have the children interact. Like maybe the first few minutes, I think as somebody mentioned yesterday too, like you can ask them to, interact, like draw a picture or, something that you can give them a topic, draw a picture and explain more about it. So you'll have to think out of the box and try different ideas to stimulate younger children. So, but yeah, in our place, we had children come to school and they provided, the desks were spaced apart. They provided desk shield for all the children, the masks and everything. So they did that. Because they felt like small children really need to be in school to learn. It was better for high school students because they were somewhat motivated that they have to learn. But younger children, it's you will have to really, give some creative things like the drawing and all those things. So, or they can say a few minutes, give them a topic, give them, let them express, say a few minutes, they can say something about the topic. So I think that's the way you have to make them interact one by one. So spend some time on that.
Thank you, madam. Now, small children continuously sitting in front of the laptop is difficult now. So we are giving activities also. They have to sit in front of the laptops, no?
Right. Well, maybe just for the instruction period, like you can give them some instructions, and the rest of the time, like, I don't know, for submitting the homeworks, how are they doing that? Are they like, are they submitting the homeworks? Are their parents helping them to submit the homework? Like take a picture and submit it? How are they doing that? Means they'll have to do something like that. Or, even if they can record, suppose if they're going to talk about a topic, if their parents can record it and send it, some few things like that, and you'll have to give them breaks because I know their attention span is not too much also. So you may have to give few breaks in between.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, take care and please stay safe, all of you. All right. So take care.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I call upon Mr. D. Mohan Raj, student teacher, to deliver the token of gratitude.
Thank you, Kirtana. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Good evening to one and all. It's my great pleasure to present the vote of thanks in this webinar on impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education. On behalf of our Lakshmi College of Education and India Literacy Project, I extend my gratitude to our great honorable resource person, Mrs. Saroj Kandasamy, Applications Engineer, US Department of Energy's Brookhaven, National Laboratory, New York, USA. A right person only can give us a very good knowledge. Yes, today you gave us a lot of information and knowledge by your speech. You handled the session in an excellent way and it was very impressive and informative. Also, you delivered the content with the understandable flow. You clearly explained about the school system, preparations for the upcoming school year, and COVID-19 checks, and some more, etc. After your session, our area of knowledge has been increased a little bit more by your speech. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Also, I thank all the participants in this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Stay safe.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Mohan Raj. Now, I am here to introduce our resource person. It's my great privilege to introduce Dr. Diana Milillo, a professor in Department of Psychology at NASA Community College in Long Island, New York, where she taught for 15 years. She teaches classes in a variety of areas, including introductory psychology, lifespan development, human adjustment, and a graduate seminar on social and community psychology. She has conducted research on issues of gender bias, violence, and trauma, and speaks frequently on long-term impact of early and chronic trauma. She earned her PhD in social psychology at the University of Connecticut a master's in clinical mental health counseling, a graduate certificate in women and gender studies, and postgraduate training in parent education and parent guidance, etc. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm going to present my screen. Okay. Can you all see that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay. So thank you so much for having me here. It's a privilege to speak with you. My name is Diana Malillo. I am a psychology professor as well as a therapist, and I'd like to talk today about psychological issues that have come up because of the pandemic, both for adults and for children. And it is a very personal experience for all of us. When we first went on lockdown, I remember exactly where I was. It was Friday, March 13th. That was the day that schools closed. I remember where I was, who I was with. In the subsequent weeks, the days were filled with finding or making masks, being scared to go outside, being up in the middle of the night, worrying if we would run out of food, washing down groceries with gloves and bleach on, watching the news daily, hourly for information about what was happening in our world, following the death toll country by country, town by town, not sure what would happen to my children if I got sick, had to quarantine, or worse. As of yesterday, there have been 4 million global deaths, and leading those confirmed cases are the US and India. The repeated exposure to our mortality was all around us for the past year and a half, coupled with at first an unclear understanding of exactly how the virus was transmitted. We know more now. How effective were our safeguarding behaviors? Again, we know more now. And we questioned at the beginning how long we were going to live with this. What we have gone through in the past year and a half was certainly both personal and collective trauma. An organization on substance abuse defines trauma as an event or series of events or a set of circumstances that is experienced as physically or emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on an individual's functioning and physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. The American Psychological Association used to define trauma as something where a person had to be in a near-death experience. We no longer see it that way. It can be anything that is frightening or threatening. So part of what I want to lay out for us today in this time is how we respond to trauma and how it may look for children. When something frightening or scary happens, the brain creates a very rich emotional memory of an event or a time period. It really is nothing more than classical conditioning. For those of you who remember classical conditioning or Pavlov and his dogs, when we are physically threatened, our body encodes everything that is going on in that moment. The physiological feelings in our body, the sensory input that we get from the environment, so sounds, smells, touch, taste, And all of them fold in together to create a memory of an event. So how aroused or regulated our body is, as well as whatever is going on around us. And then our responses or our feelings are triggered whenever we encounter those sensory experiences again. When we smell something, taste something, hear something, or see something that reminds us of where we were when we were scared. I have reactions still when I hear an ambulance, remembering the time when the streets were very eerily quiet and just hearing an ambulance pass by, wondering if it was someone I knew in there. I remember smells of sanitizer or the smell of the first mask I was able to get my hands on. Those bring back a sense of where I was when I was very scared at the time in the early days of the pandemic. And what effect has this had on our mental health? Again, adults' mental health and children's mental health are very linked. Adults' mental health during the pandemic, as far as many studies that have already been done in the US, has shown that we have seen an increase in anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thinking. Every age group has experienced this, though in different ways. And with different circumstances, but some groups that have experienced an increase in anxiety and depression more have been women, those who are parents of children under 18, those with lower incomes, those who live alone, and those with a previous history of any mental illness. Again, these are US-based statistics, and some cross-cultural research shows that the US has seen slightly higher rates of anxiety and depression compared to other industrialized countries. I wonder if this is also due to some of the socio-political chaos that has gone on in the US during the past year and a half as well. I spent a lot of time this year thinking about an older theory in psychology by Abraham Maslow called the hierarchy of needs. And the idea is that we need our very basic needs met in order to eventually fulfill some of our more higher level or full potential needs. This year, no one was living their best life. No one was really thinking about the expression of our highest needs being met. For many people, the early part of the pandemic especially was filled with figuring out on a daily basis what we needed to survive. For some, it was as critical as how to take their next breath, or for others, how to keep their most vulnerable family members safe. And the need to feel safe and still feel connected to other people was one that lingered and still is lingering for us, even as in the US, our country is opening up more and more each day. Oops. So the reason we're here today is, what does this mean for children? What does this mean for children's experiences? Children in general have been deemed by the CDC to be at the lowest risk of severe effects from COVID, although we're still unsure of what the long-term physical and psychological effects may be. Children were abruptly pulled from the life as they knew it. Their days were very different during and after the lockdown. School-aged children, as we've heard in the previous talks, were subject to learning and experiencing school in a very different way than they had previously done. And we were not able to imagine what it would continue to look like, either having at first no concrete schedule when we didn't know what was going on, to then various forms of hybrid, synchronous, or asynchronous learning. Even reintroducing children back into in-person learning this year has come with mixed emotion, especially in some of our US states. Some parents have vigorously pushed for full-time, in-person, and even maskless days, while other parents have protested that this was too soon, especially for children, as you heard in the last talk, under 12 who are still unvaccinated. So what does this mean for children's lived experience during these chaotic, ever-changing times? And I speak not only as a psychologist, but as a mother whose two children, now 11 and 7, were, for various reasons, homeschooled or virtual all year long. So I go back again to some theory in psychology and building our schema or building our mental template for what this experience is. In general, if you remember Piaget, if you've studied children's cognitive development, children need to fit each new experience into a category, either that they've already created based on previous experience, which we call assimilation, or they have to create a new category. What am I going through right now? It gives way for higher areas of the brain up to our cortex to develop, to connect, to wire. However, Bruce Perry, another picture of the same model, Bruce Perry argues that when the brain stays in a stress response, a fight or flight state, or an arousal, stress, that becomes the norm for children. So sometimes when children are chronically nervous, worried, scared, that becomes their baseline. And it shuts down the ability to do those higher level functions that we need to do at school, or that we expect students to use at school, like thinking about math, learning, remembering, decision making. All of those higher level functions depend on us feeling secure and safe. So there's a lot of research about the long-term academic effects of children who are chronically scared, worried, or experience trauma. And what does this look like in our children? What does trauma, anxiety, or depression look like in children? It can look different in children than adults. So when we say depression, not always we see people crying. Sometimes anxiety or depression can look very differently in children. Sometimes there's an absence of expression in the face, numb or flat facial affect, the expression motion, lack of motivation, distraction, inability to focus. The brain is looking for danger and is not able to focus on an academic problem. Detachment, the feeling of not being in one's body. Looking sleepy, tired, looking wired, restless. Sometimes children are very fearful of making mistakes. Sometimes children who are anxious try to be extra good or be a helper to not burden the adults. Sometimes children act out or do bad behaviors. Sometimes children are irritable or have a sudden shift of mood. Once I had a student in class, a college student, who would fall asleep very often. And I knew she was a serious student and she wanted to be there and wanted to learn, but she could not stay awake. And when I asked her about it, she told me how much trauma she was living with, and her body would just shut down. So we are in the middle of a hard place. There is fear, there is worry, there is trauma, there is loss and death going on all around us. How do we help our children feel safe in the midst of this global pandemic? It's a very real struggle. So I offer some general tips for adults and things we can do with children. This is not exhaustive. This is a combination of things from our psychological organizations, as well as things that I have experienced being a parent of children myself. For adults, as I said before, children take on adults' energy and adults' worries. So for adults, the more that we can regulate and calm and be in control, if possible, of our own feelings, the better we can model that for our children. It is very hard when you're worried and scared and not sure what the world is going to look like. But being honest with ourselves, there were days where I had to cry. I had to, excuse me. I had to release my own feelings of worry. When we tried to keep them in and keep them under control, even for people who talking about feelings are uncomfortable, showing feelings are uncomfortable, but when we try to suppress them, they come out in other ways. Sometimes we can be irritable because we're scared. We can be demanding because we want things to go a certain way. We want to control as much as we can in our world when there's so much out of control. So for adults, being honest with our feelings, regulating our own mental state first, breathing, cry, release feelings as they come up, using social support, talking with other adults about what's on our mind, what our worries are. We are often, as adults, holding very strong, significant worry, such as, what will happen to my children if I get COVID? Or if they get COVID? Or if my parents get COVID? For some people, talking about these might be too scary, so writing them. Journaling is very effective. In this picture here, it's important sometimes to also understand what we do have control over and what we don't have control over. One thing we do have control over is how much we take in of news, of rates of COVID in our area, of the death toll. Although those seem like important pieces of information that we need to know, will it help or hurt our experience in our everyday life? Often limiting our exposure is something we can control and something that will not re-trigger fear throughout the day. For parents and children, again, I feel it's important for parents to create a space for children to express their own feelings. Often they may not be saying or asking us about what's going on, but they may be feeling our worry, our anxiety. So having an open conversation with children gives them a way to express their worry instead of their behavior showing it. So open-ended questions as simply, how are you feeling? What are you thinking about? Do you have worries? Some of these questions we don't sometimes ask children or give them space to think about, to talk about. But children need to cognitively wrap their head around what is going on in uncertain times. And as adults, we can model our own expression of feelings and coping with our feelings. So maybe stating something like, I get scared too sometimes. Or sometimes I miss the things we used to do, especially for children whose lives have drastically changed. Giving them some tools. When I get scared, I talk to my mother, talk to my sister, go for a walk. Maybe we can do those things together. With children, it's also important to remember that not all expression of emotion is verbal. Many, many times they express how they're feeling in other ways. Maybe they don't have words for it yet, especially young children. Maybe they are unsure how to verbally say how they're feeling. So sometimes kids need another set of tools to express how they're feeling. Play is the way that kids often get out what they're feeling. So playing with toys, playing with anything, rocks, sticks, drawing, singing, dancing, any type of creative expression is often how children the first month of my children's fully virtual online learning this year was uncertain schedule would be, but certainly by the end of the year, they had a very, very clear schedule of times for reading, times for math, times for science, even breaks in between. They knew exactly what time to expect what thing is possible, even in full virtual learning, to have routine and schedule. And being fully virtual can even allow us to create new routines. The old method of being in school, fully in school, or I should say pre-COVID, wasn't working when we were in lockdown. We couldn't adapt the same way. So we had to create new routines and new rituals. So for example, those times where we would move or dance during the day, giving kids special jobs and roles, even virtually. My first grader had each week a different job. So one week she was the chat monitor. One week she was the homework monitor. And all that is her repeating what the homework was, or show and tell. Very simple, but it gave kids a role and it gave kids something to look forward to. So the same tools don't often work, and we have to think of new tools. Also, for places who are going through new waves and new uncertainty, please keep in mind those bottom-up needs. We need, at a minimum, to feel like we are safe in the moment, or that we have our basic needs met in the moment. This sometimes is all we can do. So lowering our expectations actually for what we expect for our children this year, or when you're in the height of the pandemic, I feel is important. We just couldn't hold our students as if they were pre-pandemic, before any of these needs were part of our world. We just couldn't expect them to act and perform the same way, their current needs. And also for more serious situations, if themselves, their parents, their grandparents, if they're away from their own parents, that separation can absolutely create more anxiety, more depression, more trauma. We need to pay attention. Children will tell us, but also changes in behavior or nonverbal behaviors. It may, but just having some screening in schools for children who may be dealing with more severe mental health needs, like more severe depression, more severe anxiety. I think this is easier done when parents and teachers have an idea of what anxiety or depression can look like in children. And if possible, have institutions, schools, increase mental health services for children and parents. This can be in the form of parent support groups, even virtual like this, or meeting in groups with children to talk about worry or feelings. Again, giving children a space to express rather than ignore is really important when children are dealing with trauma. I also want to leave on this point that children are incredibly resilient. We've seen children over this past year and a half go to school, function, wear masks all day, be happy and joyful, even when the world is rather crazy. So children, again, consistently amaze me in how they're able to adapt and thrive in many situations. Thank you. Please all stay safe. And it was such a pleasure to speak with you this morning.
school buildings in the United States. Not all, but there are too many in urban situations where they're physically not safe places to be before the pandemic. And so again, this pandemic has highlighted inequities. And I realize I sound very, very critical, and I am, because I think sometimes it's so difficult to face this, but I think we have to face these inequities if we really want to have thriving populations who are resilient and able to deal with the coming challenges that we'll have with this pandemic and with the changes that our worlds are going through. And as other speakers have said, we've talked about how parents have taken on so much more. So much depends on families. When we've been fully remote, blended, or in person, parents have had to make sure that the Wi-Fi connects and that there are devices, and that they've had to learn technological literacy and understand the language. And there's just an amount of executive functioning of families to be able to manage the schedule and the moving parts for young children. So parents, not only are they trying to grapple with whatever their work situation is, but then they are becoming they're always co-teachers, but they're even needed more to become co-teachers in this situation. But teachers have really rallied. They have really, really worked hard to have frequent parent or guardian conferences, to making sure that some of the money that goes to the police actually can be part of supporting safety measures in schools, not through police, but through making sure that people are tested, to make sure that there's a lot of counseling and support for students going through challenges. So I want to share some recommendations that these come from Heather Howe. She's the executive director of an organization in California, and I felt that she encompasses a lot of the ideas that I think I've seen in other people putting forward. So number one, she talks about centering relationships. And as others have said, children won't learn without feeling some sense of emotional connections. And this is true for families. So this is why we center this. Once we have a heartfelt connection somehow, some way, then other things can unfold. So as she suggests, connect one-on-one with every family and every student to build partnerships, to build trust, communication between families and educators. And I was so pleased to hear that in Dr. Kandasami's experience, that is really happening. Create dedicated time and space for relationship building and re-engagement. So that means lots of group meetings. The districts are having forums for parents. Make sure people feel informed and that they know that you're available. And then the last one here, she says, is implement positive and restorative discipline practices. So that means rather than being very hard on students when discipline is needed, finding ways for them to learn from their mistakes and to do activities that are healing what they have ruptured and not just punitive. Address whole child needs. So that means conduct regular student wellness screenings, assess student learning and review data on attendance, engagement, grades, and stakeholder perceptions about the school conditions and climate. In other words, really, we can't plan without knowing what is. And so we really need to find out, not in a way that will help us shape the environment better. We have to assess what students have learned and to really understand how they are coming into the situation back at school. We need to create an action plan to meet the individualized whole child needs of every student by addressing student trauma, as the last speaker spoke about, implementing community school strategies, as I was just speaking about, and better aligning services within the schools and districts to meet students' diverse needs, particularly counseling right now, but I would also say the arts. I think the arts are a form of counseling: music, singing, dance. Strengthen staffing and partnerships. Pair students with high dosage, meaning quite a bit of tutoring and mentoring. Provide mental health supports. Offer expanded learning opportunities, including summer school and out-of-time school. We are finding that's really helpful this year to have summer school. Staff up to support student re-engagement by hiring new staff, liaisons, and community partners. Again, getting support outside the school as well. Make teaching, learning relevant and rigorous. Advance racial equity and cultural responsiveness through instructional materials and books. That means everyone needs to be seen, basically. Where they come from, where children come from, needs to be acknowledged, and that needs to come through our curriculum as well. Advance racial equity in teaching through providing all educators with professional development opportunities and strategies and tools. Offer students choice and voice in their learning. They will become more engaged the more we give them some choices or some sense of direction. Focus on priority, standards, and lessons to accelerate rather than remediate learning. What's going to take students forward? And lastly, empower teams to rebuild and reimagine systems. And many school systems are doing this in Oklahoma and in Maine, where you create restorative, restart, and transformation teams so that this work is systematized and continues long-term. That means take advantage of what new things schools have learned and put them in place for the long term. Establish a district-wide vision and framework for transformational and systemic change. Things have been disrupted. Now's our chance to redo it. So just in conclusion, human connections and interactions are at the heart of education. We need a widespread push to recognize the identity and health of the whole child in K through 12 education, which will help educators design support systems that can reduce inequity on multiple levels. Let us be inspired by Gandhi and really work to uplift everybody, all students, not just those who have access and who have some privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enlightened speech. Dear participants, if you have any queries, please put it on the chat box.
I know it's late. I know this has gone on, so I understand if we need to complete.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you all. Now I invite Ms. F.D. Nandini, student teacher, to deliver a gratitude.
Thank you, Kirtana. A warm and cherished evening to one and all present here. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the organizing committee and the entire fraternity. First of all, my sincere thanks to the renowned speakers and delegates who took out their valuable time and joined us today. On behalf of Lakshmi College of Education and India Literacy Project, I extend my gratitude to our resource person, Dr. Jennifer Laddett Consulting, co-founded Class Action with Solis in USA, who handled the session on impact of COVID-19 on USA education, challenges and opportunities. Through her speech, she insisted that COVID increased already existing inequalities like race, class, socio-economic status, housing and gender, etc. Education technology, the immense inequality of who attend Zoom schools is huge and a heartbreaking problem for which there is not a equitable solution. And also, she clearly
child psychiatrist Cambodia shared his expertise on the topic impact of COVID-19 on children and ways of helping them during and after the pandemic. He mentioned many real situations and analysis of the research studies that helps the participants to understand the topic. He pointed out that the challenges for children with a disability by two stories. As a solution, he listed out few activities like peer-to-peer, buddy scheme, art theory, and art therapy to implement in schools in the post-pandemic, which are based on the educational principles of great personalities, Rabindranath Tagore's naturalism, and the Ivan Illich deschooling. In the session 2, the resource person, Madam Mrs. Sangeeta, Executive Director, Deed Foundation, Madurai, shared her experiences on the topic psychological issues of crematorium workers during pandemic. She highlighted the real-time working nature through videos, the risk factor and the physical, psychological and emotional issues discussed in her presentation. Day 2 of the webinar started with the prayer song by Selvi K.N. Mahil Malar and the gathering welcomed by Dr. F. Vincent Rajasekhar, Assistant Professor, Lakshmi College of Education. In Day 2 first session, the topic Impact of COVID-19 Lockdown on Education from Teachers' Perspective discussed by the resource person, Dr. Rocky Agarwal, Professor in Biochemistry, NASA Community College, Long Island, New York, USA. She discussed the issues identified related to work nature and personal due to lockdown. Particularly, she pointed out the benefits of remote teaching and she gave suggestions to reorganize and redesign the things around us. She also insisted the importance of ICT knowledge in pandemic. Session 2, handled by Mrs. Saroj Kandasamy, Application Engineer, National Laboratory, New York, USA. She discussed the impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education from parents' perspective. She compared the school system when the pandemic started and the preparation plan for the future academic years. She mentioned the challenges in attending college entrance examination and in the access of facilities for online classes. Session 3, handled by the resource person Dr. Diana Mililio, Professor in Psychology, Nassau Community College, Long Island, New York, USA, on the topic Psychological Issues Due to COVID-19 Lockdown. She shared her personal experience on the first day of the lockdown. She explained brain functions related to classical conditioning. She described mental health of various age group persons in pandemic. She also gave many psychological tips in her presentation. Session 4, handled by the resource person Dr. Jennifer Lord, USA, on the topic Impact of COVID-19 on USA Education, Challenges and Opportunities. She discussed the challenges and possibilities due to pandemic on parents, disabled students, teachers, and on language teaching. She recommended Center for Relationship, address whole child needs, strengthen the staffing and partnership, make teaching and learning relevant and rigorous. She ends the presentation by saying, human connection and interaction are at the heart of education. Totally about 500 participants registered through 3 WhatsApp groups. Each day, about 65 participants attended through Google Meet and 55 through YouTube Live. Till today, our college YouTube channel viewed by more than 900 members and subscribed by 555 viewers. I am sure that this webinar brought a great change in the participants' teaching learning process in the post-pandemic. In this occasion, I would like to thank our staff and students for their dedicated cooperation. Now we are in the valedictory ceremony. Like you all, I am also eagerly waiting to hear the valedictory address by our chief guest. by saying thanks to Chotana family members for their financial and moral support for this webinar. I conclude my report here. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I invite Dr. M. Malarvili, Principal, Lakshmi College of Education, to give felicitation.
Good evening, everyone. Most respected Sri V.K. Shivakumar Anna, Managing Trustee, Secretary of Lakshmi College of Education, Gandhigram, respected Dr. Triveni Rao, Scientist, New York, USA, most respected Dr. Bhumi Kumar Jagannathan, Child Psychiatrist, Cambodia, and other dignitaries and professors and my beloved participants and dear students, a warm evening to one and all gathered here for this 2 days international webinar on impact of COVID-19 lockdown in education. There are special moments and occasions in the life of every community that brings people together. Today is one such day when we remember this 2 days international webinar, all the good things that came along with it. First of all, let me congratulate all the organizers and participants on the 2-day webinar series on impact of COVID-19 in education. Concluding with the Valedictory Ceremony, I salute all the resource persons, staffs, and students who made this webinar series possible. Secondly, webinar series reminds us what our educational institutions stands for. It stands for the best in academics and for unending pursuit of excellence. We upload the value of love transferred into service and deeds of kindness. We try to our best to shine a light in this pandemic situation in the hope of that each and everyone somewhere may find comfort, joy, and cheer. We need to count our days and pray to God Almighty for wisdom to plan how to best utilize the limited time on earth that He has gifted to us. So let me wish you, all of you present here, the opportunity to utilize the knowledge you gain through this virtual webinar series to enhance your learning process. I wish to remind you that however small your role, here was not one of you is insignificant, not one of you is forgotten. You have contributed to this today's international webinar series in a very special way. On behalf of our college and Indian Literacy Projects and the organizing team, I wish you, one of you, the very best. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to welcome Mrs. M. Uma Maheshwari, Assistant Professor, Lakshmi College of Education, to introduce the guest.
Good evening to one and all present here. It is my great honor for me to introduce and welcome today's guest, Dr. A.L. Rangarajan Sir, of this startlingly beautiful evening. This man merely requires any introduction though. Sir completed Master of Commerce, Accounting, Costing, Organization and Management in Madurai Kamaraj University and also did Bachelor of Commerce, Accounting and Business Management in the same university. He had experience in India Literacy Project 19 years and also working as country manager. He also experienced in program manager. He have 24 years of experience in developing and executing programs at the grassroots level and organization coordination in this space. He currently serves as a country manager, India Literacy Project, Chennai, a developmental support organization working to be catalyst for literacy in India. Sir worked as a national coordinator at Rejuvenate India Movement in August 2014 as a collaborator with the premier institution across India. He consolidates, designed the relief and recapitulation efforts of tsunami-affected families in Nagapattinam district of Tamil Nadu on behalf of RIM. He has co-authored the book In the Footsteps of Mahatma Gandhi, Life and Writings of N. Krishnasamy. He particularly interested in development efforts around corporate social responsibility, microfinance, disaster preparedness, and micro enterprises. He was a trustee of Gandhi Darshan Kendra from 2000 to 2012. He was a coordinator of Gandhi Peace Center and also he was an internal auditor in Gandhi Peace Center. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to introduce such a great personality in this occasion. Welcome you, sir. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Ms. Uma Maheshwari, Dr. Malarvidi, Shivakumaranna, all the erudite scholars who presented before me various papers or spoke on various themes related to, the impact of COVID on education, and also all the students and faculty.
Again, a wide gap between the students of affluent families and students from poor families. So the teachers after COVID have to address this problem also. Another very important problem is the psychological disturbance of the students. Naturally, as we all know that during the COVID lockdown, many students, even the previous speaker mentioned the child marriages and like that, many students, they have undergone abuses, discrimination at home, and so many traumatic experience they might have come across. So when they come to the classroom after a long break, they will be psychologically disturbed. So this is the duty of the teachers or the educationists to find out ways and means how to motivate the students, how to make them normal in the classroom situation. Again, it's a bounded duty of the teachers to offer hope to the students. They will be confused. Sometimes they might have faced deaths in their families, or they might have themselves undergone the traumatic experience of the COVID pandemic. So the students will be psychologically disturbed. So it is the duty, again the teachers, again the educationists, or the managements of schools, or the government to find out strategies to solve this issue. Again, the evaluation system poses another serious problem. How we are going to evaluate a student who acquired knowledge through electronic gadgets and a poor student. This is another problem. So we need a change in the evaluation strategy also. Another problem that have to be addressed is the students' lack of skills. So there is a possibility that students from underprivileged sections, they might have lost their writing skills. They might have, even the communication skills, they might have lost them. So naturally, there will be a problem for this underprivileged students. So all these, there are so many other issues and problems. I think all these problems have to be sorted out by the managements or the authorities. So it's a bounden duty or the sole responsibility of the stakeholders of education to find out ways and means of solving the problems and to make the classroom free for all. Again, it is very sure that face-to-face learning is the only solution and only way to give equality in education. So education should be a democratic one. Education should be a common one. The digital platforms or online modes of studies or learnings cannot provide that equality. So only the classroom situation can offer that. For that purpose, every educationist, every teacher has to prepare, and as educationists, we have to find out a new methodology of addressing the issues. I hope that seminars like this or the discussions like this will, of course, pave ways for finding out new strategies or new technologies, new methods in making education a common one for all, and to bring back the education system to the original purpose. I hope this seminar will address this problem, and I hope this seminar will instill a kind of enthusiasm in the young teacher educators and the learners as well. I hope this seminar has served the purpose. I appreciate the efforts taken by the college for organizing a meticulously planned seminar like this. I hope this college would organize such many programs in the future for the welfare of the students, the community, and the society at the larger level. Once again, I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to deliver the valedictory address. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now I call upon Mrs. M. Kalaivani, Assistant Professor, Lakshmi College of Education, to deliver a gratitude.
Good evening, all. It's my pleasure to propose this vote of thanks on this auspicious day in the history of Lakshmi College of Education. First of all, I would like to thank Mahil Malar for her wonderful singing. The way she sung, she has brought the spiritual feelings. She made all of us to experience the spiritual feelings and made us all to shower in the blessings of the Almighty. Thank you, Mahil Malar. Next, I would like to thank our managing trustee and secretary of our college, Gandhigram Trust, Sri K. Shivakumar Anna, for his support, for his blessing, for his guidance to organize this wonderful program. And I also thank our chairman and the secretary of Gandhigram Trust, Dr. G. Pangajamamma, for her guidance and support and blessing to organize this international webinar. And I also take privilege to thank all the resource persons who have shared their knowledge, their expertise in the topic impact of COVID lockdown on education. I thank Dr. Ragi Agarwal, Mr. Saroj Kandasamy, Dr. Jennifer Lad, Mr. Dr. J.D. Dure sir, Dr. Ravichandran sir, Dr. Bhumi Kumar Anna for their sharing in various topics such as impact of COVID-19 on children and ways of helping them during and after the pandemic, psychological issues due to COVID-19 lockdown, impact of COVID-19 lockdown on education from parents' perspective, from teachers' perspective, and the challenges and opportunities on USA education. Once again, I thank all the resource persons for contributing, for sharing your knowledge, for spending your valuable time in this platform. I thank you all. It gives me an immense pleasure to thank the ILP country manager, Chennai, Mr. A.L. Rangarajan sir, for his support to the Gandhigram Trust in promoting the educational standard in the schools of Gandhigram Trust. I could remember the old Chinese proverb, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for lifetime. This is what the ILP is doing, and we are so happy. Thank you for your constant support in educational aspects, in financial aspects, and all the moral aspects in order to strengthen the educational status of our schools in Gandhigram Trust. Once again, I thank A.L. Rangarajan sir for his effort in bringing up the children of Gandhigram Trust, the educational status of children in the Gandhigram Trust. Thank you, sir. And I also extend to Dr. Triveni Rao ma'am, who have guided in organizing this program, who have suggested and who have brought all the resource person into this 2 days international webinar platform. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us and supporting us. And I also thank Mrs. P. Sankita Peed Foundation, who made her session more emotional, and every participant in the platform, we was emotionally we were very emotional looking at the cremation work of the cremators. Really, it was a very interesting session of the 2-day international webinar. And I also thank our principal ma'am for supporting us, for guiding us, and being making all together to travel as a family. Thank you, ma'am, for your support. And I also thank all my dear colleagues for making this program a grand success, and my dear students who have supported in all the aspects of preparing the invitation, right from preparing the invitation, preparing the slides, and so many things. So all the aspects of getting ready for this international webinar, I thank all my dear students, and also I thank all the active participants. Without you, this program would have not become a great success. So I thank once again everyone, and a special thanks to Dr. J.D. Dure sir, who have given a valedictory address. As you said, sir, definitely all the educationalists, we have to address this problem, and we have to come up with a new innovative teaching methodology to enhance the educational status of the poor and socially backward children. Definitely we'll all do, and we all together we'll address and we will do so many programs like this, and we'll come out with new innovative ideas, and we'll try to overcome those social problems. Thank you once again. Thank you for the opportunity for me given on this day. Thank you once again. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all the participants and delegates for your kind cooperation for being here. And most importantly, for giving your time and making your presence. Now, let us hear our Gandhigram Ganam. Thank you. Participants, please subscribe our YouTube channel, Lakshmi College of Education. Thank you. Thank you all for your kind cooperation.
Thank you, Keetana.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all.
Thank you, madam. Congratulations for successful completion of this international webinar.
Really successful only. So many problems.
Ma'am, congrats, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Asatitel, Nanna Pannel. சொல்லுங்க
5 days கூட ஈஸியா பண்ண மேடம். The 2 days we faced many disturbances.
பரவாயில்ல மேம், எதுவும் கடந்து போகும். அதெல்லாம் ஃபேஸ் பண்ணி தானே நம்ம வந்துட்டு இருக்கோம் வாழ்க்கையில ஒவ்வொரு ஸ்டெப்பும். மேடம் தேங்க்யூ
திவ்யா,
வெரி
you
மச்.
students only. திவ்யா கேக்குறா யாரு மேட் பண்ணாங்கன்னு. திவ்யா, you students only made the function successful.
மேம் சென்டென்ஸ் வந்து கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ணல மேம், அதுக்குள்ள நடுவுல அஞ்சலி மெசேஜ் போட்டுட்டாங்க. தேங்க்யூ. நான் என்ன போட்டிருந்தேன்னா தேங்க்யூ ஆல் பார்ட்டிசிபென்ட்ஸ் ஹூ மேட் அவர் வெபினார் சக்சஸ்ஃபுல் அப்படின்னு போட்டுட்டேன் மேம்.
ஓகே ஓகே, தேங்க்யூடா. எல்லாம் டீம் தான், நீங்களும் எங்க டீம்ல இருக்கீங்க.
எஸ் மேம்.
டீம் ஒர்க் ஆல்வேஸ் சக்சஸ்.
மேடம்
நான் அதான் ஏன் ரொம்ப புவரா இன்னைக்கு வந்தாங்கன்னு நான் அந்த ஆராய்ச்சியில இருக்கேன் மேடம். பூமிக்குமார் ஆனா இப்பதான் மேடம் லெஃப்ட் ஆனாரு, இவ்வளவு நேரம் இருந்தாரு.
ஆமா ஆமா, இப்பதான் லெஃப்ட் ஆனாரு. தேவகி மேடம் வந்தாங்க.
ஆமா ஆமா, நம்ம ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ்க்கு என்னாச்சுன்னு தெரியல, பாதியில லெஃப்ட் ஆயிட்டாங்க. ஒரு நெட் பேக் இல்லையா இல்ல சார்ஜ் இல்லையா என்னன்னு தெரியல, பாப்போம். சரிங்க மேடம், ஓகே. எங்களுக்கு வந்து மலர்விழி மேடம்.
மேடம் சொல்லுங்க மேடம்.
எங்களுக்கு லட்சுமி காலேஜ்
உமாமேஸ்வரி மேடம் ஆஃப் பண்ணிட்டு ஹலோ இது க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டு போன்ல வாங்க மேடம்.
ஆமா மேடம், எனக்கு ஒர்க் இருக்கு மேடம், நாங்க பாக்குறோம்.
மேடம் மேடம் இது யாரு மேடம்? நானுமா மேடம்?
இல்ல மேடம், நீங்க வேண்டாம்.
இல்ல இல்ல, இப்ப பிரின்சிபல் மேடத்தை மூணு பேரும் கூட சொல்லிட்டு.
சரிங்க மேடம், இப்போ 5 minutes கழிச்சு மொபைல் சார்ஜ் இல்ல மேடம், நான் சார்ஜ் போட்டு கூப்பிடுறேங்க மேடம்.
அதான் ஒன்னும் ப்ராப்ளம் இல்ல. செய்ய நாங்க டீ கூட குடிக்கல, நான் டீ குடிச்சிட்டு வரோம்.
நீங்க சாப்பிட்டுட்டு ட்ரெஸ்லாம் சேஞ்ச் பண்ணிட்டு ரிலாக்ஸ் ஆயிட்டு யூ கால் மீ எனி டைம்.
ஓகே மேடம், ஓகே. ஸ்டூடண்ட்ஸ், thank you for your full cooperation. Thank you.
Thank
you. நல்லா பண்ண. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you ma'am, thank you ma'am.
இருதே ராணி, கண்டிப்பா உன்னுடைய யூடியூப்ல வாய்ஸ் வர மாதிரி நான் பண்றேன். அவங்க கிட்ட கேக்குறேன், நான் டெக்னிக்கல் ஸ்டாஃப் கிட்ட நான் கேட்ட ரெடி பண்றேன்.
சரிங்க
மேம்.
அவளுக்கு என்ன கவலை?
அவ பேசும்போது யூடியூப் ஆஃப் ஆயிடுச்சு மேம், அவ இது வாய்ஸ் வரல.
இல்ல யூடியூப் 1 ஹவராவே ஆஃப் ஆயிடுச்சு, அது எப்படி வரும்? அவளோடது வராதே.
இது நம்ம கேப்போம், நீங்க ஏற்கனவே பதிலே சொல்லிடுவீங்க அவங்க கிட்ட, கேப்போம் பிரகாஷ் சார் கிட்ட என்னன்னு.
பாவத்தை. சரி ஓகே, வைங்க ஓகே.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will try. இருதே ராணி கேக்குறோம் டெக்னிக்கல் பர்சன்.
கேக்குறோம்டா, கேட்டு சொல்றேன்.
அவங்க ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்பட்டு பிராக்டிஸ் பண்ணாங்க மேம், யூடியூப்ல பார்க்கலாம்னு நினைச்சாங்க.
புரியுது, அதோட வார்த்தை எனக்கு தெரியும்.
பரவாயில்லடா, இதுக்கெல்லாமா மூட் அவுட் ஆகுறது? பரவாயில்ல, நோ ப்ராப்ளம்.
இல்ல நான் இந்த வயசுலயே வந்துட்டு என் பேஸ் வரல, நான் கூட சண்டை போட்டேன் ஒரு நாள், அது தெரியும்ல. அது மாதிரி அந்த வார்த்தை அவங்களுக்கு இருக்கும். அதனால நான் கேக்குறேன், இது உனக்காக நான் சண்டை போட்டேன் என்னன்னு கேக்குறேன், கவலைப்படாத.
சரிங்க மேம்.
சண்டை ஓட்டாலும் சினிமா ஷூட்டிங்கே நடக்காம நீங்க சினிமா ஓடுவீங்களா? என்னங்க
இந்த அம்மா முதல்ல தூக்கி பாலைவனத்துல கொண்டு போடுங்க.
வார்த்தைகளை கொடுக்கறதுக்கு ஏதாவது இதாவது கொடுக்கணும்ல. சரி ஓகே, பை. குட் நைட்.
Thank you ma'am.
Thank you.
Good night ma'am.
என்ன வேலை இருக்குமா? குட் நைட் எல்லாம் இப்ப சொல்ல முடியாது. பாய்.